In the royal kraal of Quatakuza, as evening shadows stretch across the courtyard, a figure moves silently through the darkness. Not a warrior with gleaming spear, not a prince with royal bearing, but a man whose power lies in invisibility. Mbopha Kankamuz, a name history would remember in whispers. A servant who became a kingmaker, a shadow who would eclipse the sun itself. Tonight, his lips carry a secret more dangerous than any weapon ever forged. A plan that would topple the mightiest king Africa had ever known. Words that would transform the loyal attendant into the architect of regicide. Behind him, in the great hut, Shaka Zulu sleeps peacefully. The lion of the Zulu nation dreams of conquests and glory, unaware that death plans his schedule around royal routines. The king who trusts no one has placed absolute faith in the one man who will destroy him. This is not a story of enemy armies or foreign invasion. This is something far more chilling, the betrayal that comes from the hands that serve your meals, the voice that whispers your secrets, the shadow that follows you everywhere. Because the most dangerous conspiracies are not hatched in distant caves, by strangers with obvious motives. They grow in plain sight, nursed by familiar faces wearing masks of loyalty. Mbopha's secret would soon become Shaka's death sentence, and a kingdom would learn that the closest servants make the deadliest enemies. To understand Mbopha's betrayal, you must first witness the kingdom that made it necessary and inevitable. By 1828, Shaka's Zulu Empire dominates southern Africa like a colossus of spear and shield. His military innovations have revolutionized warfare across the continent. The short stabbing assegai replaces throwing spears. The bullhorn formation encircles enemies in embraces of death. His warriors don't just fight, they become extensions of his strategic genius. The transformation is staggering. What began as a minor chieftaincy now commands over 300,000 subjects. Tributary chiefs send cattle in tribute from territories stretching hundreds of miles. European traders arrive seeking audiences with the Black Napoleon, whose name strikes terror from the Drakensberg Mountains to the Indian Ocean. But greatness demands terrible sacrifices. Shaka's reforms crush individual will beneath collective discipline. Warriors remain celibate until proven in battle. Marriage requires royal permission. Cowardice means death. Failure means death. Sometimes, simply displeasing the king means death. The royal court becomes a place where whispered doubts can end in blood. Shaka's justice grows swift and arbitrary. A pointed finger decides life or death for hundreds. His paranoia transforms every gathering into a potential execution ground. Most devastating of all is the king's grief. After his mother Nandi's death in 1827, Shaka's mourning becomes a weapon against his own people. He forbids planting crops, prohibits consuming milk, orders the execution of pregnant women. The kingdom that once thrived under his leadership now suffers under his uncontrolled sorrow. The empire stands at its peak and at the edge of an abyss dug by its creator's hands. Among all the warriors, princes, and advisors who surround Shaka, one figure moves with unique freedom through the royal compound. Not because of noble birth or military prowess, but because of something far more valuable in visibility coupled with absolute access. Mbopha Kankamuz serves as Shaka's personal attendant, but the title barely captures his true role. He is confidant, messenger, and keeper of royal secrets. While others approach the king with ceremony and fear, Mbopha enters and exits the royal presence as easily as breathing. His proximity to power grants him knowledge that generals and princes can only guess at. He knows Shaka's moods before they surface. He understands the king's fears, weaknesses, and private torments. He witnesses the moments when the great leader becomes simply a grieving man overwhelmed by loss and responsibility. This intimacy breeds both loyalty and contempt. Mbopha has seen the king at his most vulnerable, heard him weep for his mother, watched him struggle with impossible decisions. The mystique that keeps others in awe dissolves under daily exposure to human frailty. But Mbopha possesses something equally dangerous: intelligence and ambition wrapped in servant's clothing. He understands court politics better than many nobles. His network of contacts throughout the kingdom rivals that of any general. His ability to move unsuspected through royal circles makes him invaluable as both ally and enemy. Most importantly, Mbopha recognizes what others refuse to see. Shaka's reign has become destructive to the very kingdom it created. The king's grief-induced policies threaten to tear apart everything the Zulu nation has built. Perhaps it takes a servant to recognize when a master has become a danger to himself and to everyone around him. The transformation of Mbopha from loyal servant to deadly conspirator doesn't happen overnight. It grows slowly, fed by daily exposure to a king whose grief has curdled into something far more dangerous. The breaking point comes during Shaka's extended mourning for Queen Mother Nandi. What begins as understandable sorrow evolves into kingdom-threatening madness. The king declares that rain will not fall until his grief is properly expressed. Crops cannot be planted, milk cannot be consumed. Any woman found pregnant must die alongside her husband. Mbopha watches the consequences unfold from his privileged position. Children begin dying of hunger while the king demands impossible demonstrations of collective mourning. Warriors waste away while forbidden to consume the cattle they've captured. The kingdom's strength bleeds away to satisfy one man's uncontrolled grief. In whispered conversations with other court insiders, Mbopha begins testing dangerous ideas. What if the king's mind has been damaged by loss? What if his policies will destroy everything their people have built? What if someone with access, someone trusted, needs to act? The servant's network of contacts becomes a web of conspiracy. He reaches out to Prince Dingaan, Shaka's half-brother, who has grown increasingly uncomfortable with royal policies. He sounds out Prince Melangina, another royal son who questions the kingdom's direction. He identifies others who share his concerns, but lack his access to act on them. Mbopha's unique position makes him indispensable to the growing conspiracy. Only he can move freely through the royal compound. Only he knows Shaka's daily routines intimately. Only he can coordinate the timing that will make regicide possible. The loyal servant slowly becomes the spider at the center of a web designed to catch a king. September 22, 1828. The date burns itself into Zulu memory like a brand seared into flesh. Mbopha has spent weeks perfecting the plan. Every detail matters when the target is the most feared warrior king in Africa. Timing, location, coordination, a single mistake means not just failure, but the torture deaths of everyone involved. The conspiracy requires royal participants to legitimize regicide. Prince Dingaan provides the political justification. He will claim the throne to save the kingdom from Shaka's destructive policies. Prince Melangina offers additional royal blood to share responsibility. But both princes need someone with intimate access to create opportunity. That someone is Mbopha, the servant who knows when Shaka bathes, when he eats, when he holds court, when he walks alone. The attendant who can approach without triggering suspicion. The shadow who has become invisible through familiarity. The plan unfolds with deadly precision. Mbopha ensures that Shaka will be in the royal kraal at the appointed time, relaxed and unsuspecting. He positions himself to provide the signal. He confirms that loyal guards are distracted or absent. As afternoon shadows lengthen across the courtyard, the conspirators take their positions. Dingaan approaches from one direction, Melangina from another. To any observer, it appears to be a routine family meeting. Brothers gathering to discuss kingdom business. Shaka notices nothing unusual. Why should he? These are his half-brothers, his trusted servant, his own royal compound. The king who suspects everyone has been trained by years of routine to trust this particular configuration of people in place. The trap closes with ruthless efficiency. The greatest military mind Africa had ever produced falls victim to domestic conspiracy orchestrated by his most trusted attendant. The assegai strikes from behind, the ultimate dishonor for a warrior who had never retreated from any battle. Not from enemy hands, but from those of his own half-brothers, guided by the intelligence of his most trusted servant. Shaka staggers, blood spreading across his royal kaross. For a moment, the lion of the Zulu nation turns to face his killers. Recognition flickers in his eyes, not just of his attackers, but of the betrayal's magnitude. The servant who arranged this moment stands watching, his face a mask of grim satisfaction. "Are you stabbing me, kings of the earth?" Shaka gasps, his voice carrying both accusation and prophecy. "You will come to an end through killing one another." The words hang in the air like a curse as the greatest African leader of his generation collapses in the dust of his own courtyard. The king who had unified dozens of tribes, revolutionized military tactics, and built an empire that stretched across hundreds of miles dies at the hands of family guided by servant treachery. News of the assassination spreads through the royal kraal like wildfire. Warriors who had followed Shaka through countless victories stand paralyzed by shock. The immortal king, the man who seemed immune to spear and bullet, lies dead, murdered by those closest to him. Mbopha moves quickly to consolidate the conspiracy's victory. He helps manage the immediate aftermath, ensuring that Prince Dingaan can claim the throne before rival claimants organize resistance. The servant who orchestrated regicide now works to legitimize its consequences. But even in death, Shaka's presence dominates the scene. The body of the fallen king seems to radiate authority that his killers struggle to claim. The empire he built begins to fracture immediately, torn between loyalty to his memory and acceptance of his murderer's rule. History struggles to judge Mbopha's role in Shaka's death. Caught between competing narratives of liberation and treachery, the case for necessary action appears compelling. Shaka's grief-induced policies were destroying the very kingdom he had built. His prohibition on planting crops threatened mass starvation. His arbitrary executions were tearing apart Zulu society. Perhaps Mbopha saw what others could not, that only regicide could save the nation from its ruler's madness. The servant's intimate knowledge of Shaka's condition gave him unique insight into the king's deteriorating mental state. Who better to judge whether the great leader had become a threat to his own people? Mbopha's betrayal might represent the ultimate act of patriotism, sacrificing personal loyalty to preserve the kingdom. But the evidence for treachery cuts just as deep. Mbopha's position of trust made his betrayal particularly heinous. The king who had elevated a servant to confidant deserved loyalty, not assassination. The method, striking from behind, without warning or chance for defense, violated every code of honor that Zulu warriors held sacred. More damning still are the consequences. Dingaan's rule brought its own cruelties and failures. The kingdom that Mbopha claimed to save began its slow decline toward colonial domination. Perhaps Shaka's policies would have ended naturally as his grief faded, leaving the empire stronger than ever. The moral complexity deepens when we consider Mbopha's motives. Did he act from genuine concern for the kingdom's welfare? Or did personal ambition drive his conspiracy, disguised as patriotic necessity? The servant who gained power through regicide had every reason to justify his actions as salvation rather than murder. The question haunts Zulu memory. Was Mbopha a liberator or the ultimate traitor? Mbopha's name survives in Zulu oral tradition as both savior and betrayer, a contradiction that reflects the moral complexity of his actions. But his story teaches lessons that extend far beyond the royal kraal of 1828. The servant's betrayal reveals the fatal vulnerability of absolute power. Shaka's strength came from his ability to inspire fear and loyalty. But the same system that made him invincible against external enemies left him defenseless against internal conspiracy. The king who trusted no one placed complete faith in the one man positioned to destroy him. Mbopha's success demonstrates that the most dangerous conspiracies grow not in distant caves, but in the shadows of power itself. The attendant who seemed invisible became the most visible threat. The servant who appeared powerless wielded the ultimate power access to the untouchable king. Perhaps most chilling is the realization that Mbopha's betrayal might represent a recurring pattern in human governance. When power concentrates absolutely in individual hands, it creates both the motive and opportunity for those closest to the ruler to act against him. The system that creates kings also creates kingslayers. Shaka's dying words, "You will come to an end through killing one another," proved prophetic. Dingaan eventually faced his own assassination. The cycle of betrayal continued, weakening the Zulu kingdom precisely when colonial forces pressed closer to its borders. Look around your own world. Where do you see the same patterns emerging? Which trusted relationships carry the seeds of future betrayal? Which powerful figures rely too heavily on those who serve them most intimately? Share your thoughts below. Was Mbopha a patriot or a traitor? Could Shaka have prevented his own assassination, or did his system of rule make betrayal inevitable? If this story of loyalty transformed into deadly conspiracy has gripped your imagination, subscribe for more tales from Africa's hidden history. Because the greatest betrayals always come from the hands we trust most. Remember Shaka's warning. And watch your shadows, especially the ones that serve you faithfully every day.